Hello and welcome to the next in our series of Feel Good, Do Good Work podcasts. And today I'm joined by Robert Camp, who is formerly the managing partner of Stephens Scown, but now running his own consultancy business. Robert actually took part in the Feel Good, Do Good Work best practices case studies that were in the book. And so it's a pleasure today to welcome Robert onto the podcast.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me on, Annette.
Oh no, it's an absolute pleasure, and it's great to catch up again. It's been a little while, so it's good to just maybe look back on what we talked about and where your thinking's gone since then, if that's okay.
That's great, yeah.
Okay, right. Well, I'll crack on. So just reflecting back on the interview that you did with me, which is probably around about last year, I think, we did talk about the relationship between providing exceptional client service and also having exceptional employees in order to deliver this. I was just interested in finding out a little bit more about that and, how your thoughts might have evolved around that.
Yeah, well, I think answering the second part of that first, how my thoughts have evolved, I think with what we've been through and these uncertain and challenging times, exceptional customer experience, client service is going to be even more important as businesses try to come out of the pandemic and grow again. And I think the reason my reflection for saying that is that this has been emotional turmoil for everyone. So how you provide the service is going to be key to retaining and winning new work, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. That then brings us back to the employees, in that I think this is a fantastic opportunity for businesses that had great employee engagement before the pandemic, but have worked on that during the pandemic and really understand the emotional journey that everybody's been on, both employees and clients, and tap into that in an empathetic way and an understanding way. So real opportunities, because it's not rocket science, it's common sense. If you can provide exceptional service and experience, then you're going to have great brand ambassadors, as well as people willing to come back and use your services, buy your products. Yeah. And as I think I said in the previous time we chatted, the best way of ensuring that you give a consistently exceptional service is having your staff really on board and engaged with the whole process.
Absolutely. And I guess that also, can be affected by how well looked after they may have felt during this pandemic as well.
Absolutely. And I mentioned when we all first went into lockdown, and it's quite interesting because this is really the first crisis since the Second World War where we're all experiencing the same thing. It's not a usual recession, and then there's no playbook, there's no Harvard business case review about it. And I remember speaking at a small event, perhaps 2 or 3 weeks into lockdown, and I said that leaders are not going to be judged on what they do or what they did, because, as I say, there was no playbook to follow, but they will be judged and remembered by how they did it. And I think that's so true in how you treated your staff, your customers, your community is going to be remembered. And those who did it well, even though they got things wrong, but they did it in the right way with the right mindset, will receive those benefits going forward. Those who got it wrong and did it in the wrong way, and we can think of high profile examples, Richard Branson, Virgin, and Sports Direct, Premier League football clubs. But on a smaller micro businesses, as I say, it's those who I think tried and got it right and really reached out to support their staff and understand the anxieties and concerns that they were experiencing will actually pay dividends going forward.
Absolutely. And I remember when we talked before about the situation at Stephens Scown and how you looked after employees and their well-being. I was always struck by You know, you saying that if you ever heard of a member of the team who was struggling, you always made sure that you reached out and wrote directly to them a personal letter to their home, and you
Yeah.
know, nobody should feel that they didn't have someone to go to. Just thinking about the, you know, the business as usual well-being that we talked about before, how is your how have your thoughts around well-being evolved, particularly around the pandemic?
Yeah. Um, Very, very interesting, and very difficult. How do you keep that personal relationship when it's all suddenly gone online and through social media?
Mm.
But I've seen some great examples of WhatsApp groups, of ensuring that communicate. It all comes back to communication and how you communicate. I was speaking again very early into the lockdown with a managing partner of a firm with 300 odd employees, and she had got a list of all of the telephone numbers, and she was just working through it day by day, making sure that
Yeah.
she contacted in one form or another, whether a WhatsApp message, an actual call, everybody. And I spoke to her about 4 months in, and she was still doing it,
Oh,
constantly going through. So it all comes down to communication. How do you communicate? And it's looking beyond the Zoom, the Teams more structured way, and understanding what works best for the staff. But
mm,
it's been very, very difficult. Stephens Scown, I think I talked to you about our positive postcards that we used to send in the internal mail. Well, they were set up online, and people were really encouraged to continue to send thank yous and well done messages through the internal resources that we had using virtual cards. And I know that people have appreciated that, because when you're very isolated working from home, to have a colleague actually reach out and just say thanks in a way that, a Stephens Scown way. But I think it's those small things, especially when people are feeling isolated, anxious, and are worried. It's just the little things always count the most and have the most impact.
I think so. And one of the things that struck me again was that family feel that you tried to bring in and did successfully bring in as part of the Stephens Scown the culture. So when an organisation gets bigger, how do you achieve and maintain that family feel? And why does it have value?
It gets difficult, but it's perseverance really, and it's ensuring that you aren't the culture. The culture is embedded in the business, and empowering others to live that culture as well. And I think that's one of the biggest changes for me, is how a lot of businesses have had to let go of command and control and look to empowerment and delegation.
Mm.
And if you can empower your teams, your staff, to ensure that they're getting that family feel right through the business, that they're maintaining the culture, then it doesn't need to just be one person. But you can still, even, we had 330 people, and I still ensured that if I heard that somebody was going through a hard time, I would still send a note. You can carry on doing it if you get bigger. It's a bit more intentional, but you do need to put in structures below the leader to make sure that your senior managers, your team leaders, your line managers are living and breathing the culture as well.
Absolutely. Just thinking back on the topic of well-being, and with a particular nod towards mental well-being, what examples have you seen where organizations have really got the balance right between needing to deliver and having that always on client focused client delivery perspective, balanced with thinking about achieving a filled work-life balance for employees?
Yeah. So a really simple one that I talked about I did a series of videos quite early on, and I mentioned it in one of them. And then I actually was speaking to a company about 6 weeks ago who had put this in place, not on the back of my video. I have hastened to add, they'd thought of it themselves. But, we were told by the Prime Minister to make sure we exercised, and lots of people were trying to do their hour exercise, walk or whatever. And it's very easy for when organizations, when they started bringing people back into the offices and the workplace, and when they ultimately do that next year, why not give staff the freedom to continue having that exercise time outside of their lunch hour.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody wants to go and do a yoga class at 11 o'clock, let them do it. If somebody wants to go just for a walk at 3 o'clock, just empower them to do it,
Mm-hmm.
rather than restricting everything to, the lunch hour. So you've got to do all your business stuff, but if you want to do something else, and of course everybody's trying to do it at the same time. The
Yeah.
firm that have introduced that, it's been incredible, they said, because people have just found that so empowering. But also, of course, as we all know, exercise stimulates your brain, makes you more physically awake, mentally awake. So ultimately it will benefit the business as well, rather than if you look at it in a negative way and say, oh, that's an hour's business lost. And
Yeah.
then the other big issue that we're all struggling with is extending the day. And certainly in professional service firms, we've lost control of our diaries, in that if a client wants to have a conversation at 7 o'clock in the evening, they can just Zoom the lawyer or the professional service person and invite them to the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But actually that creates a great opportunity, because you can empower your staff to work a bit more when they want to, but you can also bring in other staff who perhaps couldn't work during the working day and would love to do 2 or 3 hours in the evening. So I think there's fantastic opportunities, rather than making everybody work much, much harder, is to be creative in how you look to service the needs of the clients and the customers outside what we used to term core hours, without overloading your staff. So ensuring that their well-being is actually a number one priority, so that they're still giving exceptional service.
I think that's absolutely spot on, because all the evidence, despite the pandemic, tells us that people are going to live longer, and so the lines between work and life are probably going to blur, because if we live longer, we've got to fund it. So
Mm-hmm.
as we look towards longer retirements that are going to cost a lot more, we're working longer. And so therefore, as you say, there are opportunities there to just reinvent the work pattern, and it might serve some people very well to have more of a nocturnal approach and more time during the day. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and in for the legal profession in particular, I think it's 55% now of new entrants are female, and we lose a lot of female lawyers or advisors to maternity leave. Why not offer those people, if they want to work 2 or 3 evenings a week?
Yeah.
So they're servicing clients, they're keeping their hand in, they're being part of the organisation still, but it's not impacting on them being at home for the period that they want to be at home. Real opportunities to be creative in this.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's just really throwing away the rule book a little bit, really, and being quite flexible and creative in your approach.
Yes, absolutely. And again, one of the big things is you start measuring outputs rather than inputs. Then, what actually are they doing the job that you want them to do? Yes. Well, is the customer, and then measuring by customer experience. If that's scoring high, what does it matter if they're doing it outside of what we would normally call core office hours?
Yeah, it's the preoccupation, isn't it, with sticking to a process and a kind of tried and tested
Yes.
route, without, like you say, put the purpose of the organization first. And if you're delivering to purpose, and then the way that you deliver it then can be flexible, then really what does it matter?
Absolutely.
So Robert, one of the things that was very unique in Stephens Scown, and I was really interested to find out more about when we spoke originally, was this whole model of employee shared ownership,
Mm-hmm.
which I know does happen in some other organisations, but it's not that common. So I was just interested to ask you to talk a little bit more about the purpose of that, and as a model of employee engagement, how it works and why it works.
Yeah, happy. So the rationale of the purpose was going back to this exceptional customer service and experience, and really engaging all of the staff in that. And if staff know that actually, however good they do their job, the majority of the profits go to the small number of shareholders, they're going to lose enthusiasm for that. So I wanted to create a system where we all shared in the success of the business. And by going down the employee ownership route, or Scownership as we called it, it did have a dramatic impact on productivity, mental well-being, engagement, and customer experience and service, which did lead to some of the growth that we saw after we introduced it. I think it's also been really useful during the lockdown and the pandemic, because it's everybody's in it together. It's our firm that we're looking and striving to work together to come out of these times. And then externally, we had a big pipeline of organizations were doing something similar before lockdown. And when lockdown happened, we thought, well, that will be the end of this. But we've actually completed three transactions during lockdown, and quite a lot of other companies are still wanting to go down this route. I think it's actually become much higher up on people's agenda. Purpose. Everybody's talking about purpose. I think lockdown and the pandemic has made us all sort of reevaluate what's the real reason we work and why do we want to work. And purpose is becoming more and more important for the younger generation. They want to work for purpose-led organizations. And sharing the profits is a great statement to say, yes, we're a purpose-driven business, because we are in this for everybody, not just the few at the top, not just the small number of shareholders. So I think there's great opportunities again. I think organizations that do it will see that their recruitment will improve, their retention will improve, but ultimately their growth and profitability will improve, because everybody will be wanting to strive for success.
Well, that's very compelling. And for yourself, I mean, are you working primarily within the legal sector on this, or are you reaching out to other sectors for this model?
No, we've done an IT company, a recruitment company, and a firm of accountants. Were the three that we've completed during lockdown, and a real mixture of organisations. Yes, we have got some law firms because they're interested in how we did it, but we've got other, manufacturing. We've got retailers, and mainly where it's people who are thinking about succession. So how do they retain the organisation that they've created without just selling out to a bigger competitor? And those who really want to engage with their staff and drive the business forward through that means, rather than just forcing productivity and efficiency gains on people, knowing that actually that will work for a period, but after a period most staff will leave.
Yeah, I think that's true. People these days, when they're looking, well, I suppose in more normal times, let's say, but when they're looking, they have the agenda, I think, to look at organisations and think, well, do you have the values that I relate to? Do you have the policies that I admire? Do you have a culture I'd want to buy into? Do you have a purpose I want to be part of? All of those kinds of things. And if you don't, then, they'll look elsewhere, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting how many more companies during lockdown have actually obtained B Corp certification, which again encompasses all of the things you've just mentioned, Annette. And why are they doing that? I'm sure part of the reason is recruitment, because they know that, in particular, the younger generation, once we come out of this pandemic and the fallout from it, will be wanting to work for businesses and organizations that align with their own individual purpose. And I think that is a sea change from sort of 5-10 years ago, where you went to work to do a job. Now people are saying, I want to work with somebody an organization I can really identify with, who I feel are having an impact in how I personally want to have an impact on society and the world.
Yeah, and I think that's a mindset change as well, isn't it? Like you say, a few years ago, and I mean, let's not sort of deny that, obviously times are very difficult in the economy in certain sectors, and I'm thinking about hospitality and the events industry. It's extremely difficult. So many excellent people out there looking for work, and what I was going to say is that it's a mindset shift in putting yourself in the driving seat of looking at organizations, you know, that you would feel happy working for, balanced with, you know, jobs are difficult in some sectors to find at the moment, but I think it helps to be able to look with purpose, to ask the right questions at an interview, and actually to put recruiters on the spot with, perhaps we, you know, our clients or our organizations should be thinking about some of the things people are looking for when it comes to long-term recruitment, because there's a cost associated, isn't there, with retention. So, and train.
Absolutely. And also, if you've spent a lot of time, money and effort getting the culture to where you want it, the last thing you want is somebody coming in who isn't aligned with the culture and actually can very quickly start to dismantle that. So I think, again, organizations have gone through this mind shift that they need to employ people who are in tune with the culture that's been created, and actually want to embrace and enhance that culture.
I think that's right. I think that's right. Well, Robert, thank you so much for your time today. It was great to be able to catch up and hear what you've been up to since we last spoke. And I really appreciate, once again, you being part of the book. So that's going great guns, and you know, due in no small part to your contribution as well. So thanks again for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure, Annette. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.